Well, what do we've got here? All right, so used the Bobcat, unloaded the 460, and it is now in the shop. So the guy I bought the dove heads from, he asked me if I needed, an engine. Told him no. He had this one. This is out of a 84 F250 or 350, and he also had one that was a 96 out of I don't know what, and I don't remember if I've told y'all yet or not, but took this 2,500 mile road trip to Pikes Peak, and partway up, I started noticing some really bad blow by, and it's got a really bad, let's flip over to here, really bad blow by. You can see all the oil, and you could say, well, it could be that deal, and it could be, but it is puffing smoke out, with it idling, which it was not doing before the trip. So I don't know, it ran great, no complaints there, but it does have quite a bit of blow by. So this engine was really nasty inside. Back to our original one. It's more comfortable standing here than leaning under the hood. The R460 and the Lincoln, it was nasty inside. What I've seen happen before is, if an engine's not maintained, what'll happen is carbon will build up between the ring and the piston, and it pushes the rings out, makes them tighter. So then they're pushing harder against cylinder walls, so they wear more. And then if you start maintaining that engine, what'll happen is sometimes the detergent and the oil will start cleaning that carbon, and when it does, the rings come back down, and now they fit sloppy, and so you get blow by. I kind of think that's what's happening here, but anyway, back to our engine here. So contacted that guy again that I got the dove heads from, and he still had these engines. I really wanted the 96. Took a 15/16 socket and ratchet and tried the 96 engine. The reason I wanted the 96, I figured it was EFI, and I figured it probably had less wear. They just burn cleaner. You end up just a better running engine, normally less cylinder wear with EFI. Anyway, so I wanted that engine. It also, I think, has 15cc dished pistons, which I think would have brought my compression up to about 9.5 to 1. This one has 22cc, which will put it about 9 to 1, which 22cc is what my engine in the Lincoln has. Anyway, so put a bar on the 96 engine, and it was seized. I did get it to break loose, but it did get to a spot where I could hear it was crunchy, and I just stopped there. So definitely it had water sit in it, and I really didn't want to be in the position of having to have it bored, and it defeats the whole purpose of the pistons, the difference in the pistons that I wanted. So anyway, we went with this engine. It has been sitting with the intake open. It was originally wrapped. When I got there, it was not wrapped. The wrap had disintegrated. I don't know how long it's been open. It was sitting on a shelving unit, like an industrial shelving unit outside, but it did have a big flat gas tank, like one that would go under a trunk or something, big flat one, sitting on the shelf above it. So I'm hoping that kind of prevented rain from getting in. It did turn over easy, but I did get to a spot, I made a full revolution on it, and it turned over just fine. And then I was looking at the 96 engine again, and then I came back to this one and decided I'd turn it over some more just to make sure before I bought it. And I did get to a spot that kind of sounded like it hydrolocked, and then it kind of pushed past it. I kind of backed up and then went again, and it pushed past it. I'm wondering if, maybe it did have some water in the intake, but the valve was closed. And as I rotated it, that valve opened, dropped some water in. And when I came back around again, it was trying to compress it. So I want to get this thing torn apart, see what we've got here. If this one ends up, the reason I bought it was because I could leave the engine in the Lincoln, build this one slowly over time, as I can collect parts and all that kind of stuff. I could just build this engine, and I'm not taking the Lincoln down. It's kind of a nice thing to be able to do, and then swap this engine in, in a weekend, and we're ready to go. But if it turns out that this engine is in bad shape or worse shape than the engine we have looked in the cylinders. They look great on this one. We could definitely, the one in the Lincoln, we could definitely just hone it, put some rings in it, bearings, that kind of stuff, gaskets, and be done with it. This one, if we end up in a position where it needs to be bored, or the crank needs to be turned, or anything like that, we're going to punt on this engine, and we'll work on the one that's in the Lincoln, if that makes sense. So what we've got to do now is tear this thing down. I'm going to pull the plugs on it, see what they look like, see if they've had water in it. It's not locked up. Like I said, it does turn over completely. It doesn't sound crunchy. It sounds smooth. But it did get to that spot that felt like it wanted to hydrolock. It didn't feel like the cylinders, if you've turned one over, I've turned over a lot of engines that have been partially seized, and you get unstuck, hydrolocked. That feeling of hydrolock, it's more squishy, I guess, instead of a hard stop. Whereas, and so that's what it felt like. So I'm pretty sure my theory is probably correct. The valve opened, dropped some water in. I don't care about these heads. They're just probably very similar to the ones that are on the Lincoln. We've got the dove heads that we will put on this engine if we end up going with this engine. So I don't really care if water has sat in the head, and then as long as the cylinders are good, I don't really care what the heads are like. So that's what we need to figure out. So I'll set up some time lapse. We got to strip this thing down. It is got everything on it, front accessories. That's kind of my thought was, I got this thing cheap. So it's got quite a bit of stuff on it that we could use if the engine doesn't turn out to be good. I don't know if these manifolds are the same, but it does have, a Duraspark 2 distributor if we wanted to upgrade to that distributor. I don't know if there's any advantage between Duraspark 1 and 2, but it does not have of course, the fender module. It's got some pulleys. Mine's chewing belts, so we may look at possibly using this pulley setup. I don't know if we can. Other things on it. It does have a starter on it. I don't know if the starters are different between an automatic and a manual, but there is a starter sitting down there. So that's something, maybe. We could run a compression test on this thing, but I really don't care. Like I said, we're not using the heads. I'm rings, bearings, and gaskets for this thing on Rock Auto, $188. So for $200, I can put all that stuff in it, and that's money well spent. So I really don't care about compression numbers right now, because it's going to get rebuilt anyway, and we'll inspect all the pistons and all that stuff when we tear it down. So like I said, I'm going to set up some time lapse, and we will tear into this thing. I really don't know my plan of attack here, so I'm just going to grab a box, like a storage tote, and just start tearing into it. I think I'll take valve covers off, start stripping some of this stuff off the intake, this emission stuff, and probably pull plugs out. Maybe we'll do plugs first, just to see what the plugs look like, and then start tearing into it with the intention of stripping everything off the intake, or strip everything off the intake, all the front accessories off, this manual transmission bell housing, all that kind of stuff. This was a running engine. He said they pulled it out to do a 5.9 Cummins swap into the, it was either F250 or F350. They had it in the shop. I saw it. It looked like a clean install on the Cummins, but it was running. The guy just wanted a diesel, so that's the route they went. Actually, they were gonna build an engine. Supposedly, I think the 96 engine, they were gonna tear it down. I think put those Dove heads on it, and then just swap that in place of this one, and then they went a diesel route. I think that was the whole plan. But anyway, I'm yapping long enough. Let me start tearing this thing down. Well, I think this is about as far as we can get it. This engine looks good. I really wish it would have been covered better. You can see evidence of water that was sitting in those cylinders, but like I said, it looks like it was sitting maybe in the valves were closed, because if we look at the plugs, first of all, this thing was burning pretty clean, but if you look at this one's got some water in it, but the plug itself looks pretty good. You can see water in it, but it definitely doesn't look like it was sitting. If you've ever saw a plug where a cylinder was sitting with water, it rusts. The plug itself will rust. These could be stainless, but it looks pretty good. I think we may be okay. And then the rest of them, this thing was burning pretty good. I broke one plug, but not bad. Uh-oh. Where's the other one? This one? No. There was one other one that had some water on it. It's a number 1 and number 2. Kind of want to get that head off, but I don't think I can. Yeah, I think I skipped over it. That's how good it was. I didn't even catch it. It's got a little bit of sludginess right here. Again, I don't know how much water this thing got in it. Hopefully not much. Cam looks pretty good. It's got some surface rust starting right there. It's a shame because this was probably a really good engine. It's a shame that it did get the amount of water in it that it did. I will I could probably get that head off, but I can't get this head off. But I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn it over, try to get that water out of it, and try to put some oil, just pour some oil straight down that'd be the easiest way, and just let it come out there. I'll put a little pan under the manifold there to catch it. But I think that's going to be our best bet. I want to get some oil in those cylinders, try to get that water out, turn it, try to get the water out. But otherwise, this thing looks really good. It's really clean. I don't know if it's possible if this thing was rebuilt. I mean, it's got some carbon and stuff. You can see like right there, you know, where carbon has built up. But I mean, if you've been following along, this engine is really clean compared to what I had on in the Lincoln. I mean, it was just caked full of carbon. So this is looking good. Kind of want to pull a head off, but it'll be easier to lift it with the head on because I can use the manifold bolts. I guess I could use a head bolt hole, but I can't get any of the rest of the front accessories off because the alternator is supporting the engine right now. So I really need to get another engine stand and get this thing on an engine stand to finish the teardown of it. But like I said, we're kind of at the point where we can't really work on this thing anymore on the pallet. Can't get the bell housing off because I think there's a starter bolt down there holding it that's bolted to this little spacer plate. So I can't get that any further. Yeah, so we're kind of at a stopping place. I don't know if this engine's been into before, but it does have the actual gaskets right here, and most people discard those, so it's possible this thing has never been apart. I don't know. We'll know once we get into it, you know, if everything's standard. I don't see any markings on it, a tag on it. I can't really see anything on this side, so there could be a rebuilder tag over here, but from what I can tell on the other side, it doesn't look like there's any tags or anything on it. So here's where we're going to leave this thing. I've ordered an engine stand, the red, whatever, Torin red something, big red. I don't know. It was the cheapest with the best reviews. I was hoping Harbor Freight had one on sale, but they do not. And so we went with the Torin. It's either 1,500 or 2,000, and it's folding. I wanted a folding one. So that's what we've got. It's on its way. It should be double the capacity of the one I've got now. 1,500 should be plenty for anything I'm going to put on it. Anyway, turn this thing over. It did dribble a little water out, not much. Put some oil just down the intake runners, and it did spit out some then oily, watery mix. I kept turning it over, and I've just filled it back, or just not filled it back up, but put some more oil back in them. That valve's closed, but I think that's fine. And then on this side, I just took a squirt gun, little oil squirt gun, and this is all just used motor oil, good, clean, used motor oil, and just squirted some in each cylinder, rotated it around, and I just sprayed some on the cam. I don't know why, but we did, and I did the lifters as well, just kind of lubricate them. Figure it'll help with disassembly later on. Feeling pretty good about it. Our really only issues are probably going to be these two cylinders, whether they have any rust damage. So we're not going to know that until we pull the heads off, and I don't think I can get the heads off until I get it on an engine stand, because it's pretty much laying on this stuff. I could lift it up, maybe put it on a tire or something to get it, you know, put a tire around the oil pan. I've done that before, and just set it down on there, and that'll kind of stabilize it on the oil pan. But I mean, really, we're just wasting time. It needs to be on an engine stand, so I think we're just gonna hold till we get that stand. It's about a week out, a little bit, no, about five days out. So pause button for now. and then we'll get this thing lifted up, get the bell housing completely off, get it bolted to the engine stand, strip the front off, take the heads off, see what we got. But feeling pretty good about it. Right, it's at least, we know, clean. So that makes me think that cylinder wear is probably pretty decent. This thing looks like it was burning clean. I don't see any signs, that it had any damage to any cylinders. Plugs all look good. No oil burning, that kind of stuff. It's just these two are question marks on whether that water hurt them. But like I said, it looks like they were maybe the valves were holding it, right? And we don't care about these heads. So the valves were closed. Man, we got lucky. And so anyway, we've got it all oiled down to keep, if we did let water in there, we've now addressed that, got that water out, put oil in to help keep it from flash rusting or anything like that. So I think we've taken care of that. It obviously got some water in somewhere, maybe through the valve cover, and that maybe the valve cover gasket leaked water in, and that's what the little sludgy water is right there. We can't drain the oil right now because we can't get to the drain plug. So I don't know what it looks like. It probably has water in it, but we'll see if we can save it. It's definitely better than that 350 we did. And of course, it had to be bored, but it was stuck. So this one's not stuck. So cross your fingers for me. Say a little prayer that this is a good engine. And my understanding, this was an 84, so I think this is an externally balanced engine. I'll have to pull the balancer off and see if it's good. It'll have a big counterweight behind the balancer if it's externally balanced. My engine's internally balanced. It is what it is. Yeah, so I don't really care either way. Yeah, a lot of people prefer the internal. Well, some people prefer internally balanced, but for what I'm using it for, it's not going to matter.